Welcome, everybody, back to Two Marine Dads, and this is episode number 4. We got a special one for you here today. John's in-house, so we're together. We don't have to do this via Discord or any other app with lag and everything else. So, Welcome, John.
Hello, everybody.
Glad you're in Montana. Much better than California, as usual.
By a long shot. Yep.
You know, today we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about role models for our kids, and the constant fight you have with popularity, even at a young age, versus what's right to do. What's popular to do versus what is right to do. Everything is talked about it over the ages, from the Bible up to any kind of modern book that you talk. It's a pretty constant thing I think parents fight. And, the modern day fight for folks like us is, people like on our political spectrum, if you will, I think most people would agree that Kardashians are not good role models for the girls or boys. Miley Cyrus, I don't see Hillary Clinton as somebody my daughters I want them to strive to. Or Kamala Harris, potential new vice president out there.
Yeah, she was picked. She was obviously she did some check marks. She filled some boxes for for the Democratic Party. She was a female and she was the right skin tone. But if you look at how she arrived there, I just speaking as a father here with 2 daughters at home, she started her career off sleeping with Willie Brown, who was the mayor of San Francisco at the time, and then very quickly after she had an extramarital affair with the guy, she got promoted to and was assigned to 2 different commissions in the state of California, and they're not just like small things either. The Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board of California, and then the Medical Assistance Commission for California. And she was out of law school for 2 years, so she really, that's how she started her career, was on her back.
And the shitty thing is she gets propped up like she's some transformative historic figure for people to look up to, like this is something special, and it really isn't. She's not even close to the first female to accomplish much of anything. The idea that she gets propped up, but then good role models, people like Candace Owens or Amy Coney Barrett is the most frequent one. Kristi Noem, the South Dakota governor, Nikki Haley, Ivanka Trump, all these really successful women in life that do great things. And some people say Ivanka Trump's only there because of her dad. Well, go look at some of the shit she's actually done. At least she's done positive shit being with her dad. She's not like the Kardashians, where she went and had sex with some dude and made a sex tape to get, famous for herself.
And then started working. Right. It's not to say that Kim Kardashian, she works her ass off, but she didn't get notoriety until
and that's the narrative.
Made a porn video.
That's the shitty narrative that a lot of people fight right now, is because they're popular because the media chooses them to be popular because they fit the media's narrative, the left narrative, a progressive narrative. I don't even want to call it liberal anymore because it's not liberal. There's nothing liberal about anything the left does. So people on the left prop these people up, like Miley Cyrus. She's nothing more than a shock jock. Right. She had her show as a kid, Hannah Montana, and then spun that into she wanted a more adult theme, and that's good for her. But the only reason she's famous is because she's a shock jock. She does dumb shit. She's almost the modern day Howard Stern. She doesn't run a radio show. She does concerts.
Wears less clothing.
Wears less clothing and dates chicks and talks about how she's, I don't know what sexual preference they made up for her to be this week, but
right.
Gets married to Thor, Liam Hemsworth, whatever his name was, and then gets divorced. And it's like, these are not the people that they're successful. And I don't want that to be seen as success. I want somebody who, and it's funny because there's thought long and hard about somebody in business who's like this, somebody in business, in the business world, that is just propped up and was picked because they were a female, or because they were black, or because they were Hispanic, and they became leaders in the business world. They're just not there. There's nobody I could find to be critical of. There's people I don't agree with on the way they run businesses. But if that happens in the business world, those businesses don't exist.
Right. You could say, okay, somebody was given a shot because of nepotism or whatever, but if they don't perform and they're not doing the job correctly, very quickly the market will decide we don't want you in here anymore, and your business will collapse. So you have to actually put in the work. You actually have to be successful.
And we're just talking on the female side, right? Like, Kamala Harris is, she's only picked for the vice president. It wasn't because she was electable. In fact, that's why she didn't do a single interview the entire time, is because she's an awful person and she sounds bad. She doesn't stand for anything. So you couldn't interview her. It would be a horrible interview. And so she was only picked because she was a woman and she was perceived as black. So she checked these boxes for the Democratic ticket, though I don't think it actually, I don't know how much it helped. But on the boys' side, it's almost worse. It's not that there's bad role models that are propped up. It's just that boys don't even know what to do. There's nothing you can do that's right. If you're masculine, if you try to be masculine and chivalrous and stuff like that, you're seen as toxic. If and then you have this whole group of guys that tried to be, to placate that, and they try to be more effeminate. Then you just get called by a pussy by all your buddies. If you don't bow down to women, you're a misogynist. If you don't fight against women, you're not a real man. You got to stand up for yourself. There's no good role models propped up out there for people. I have some, guys like Chris Pratt, who's insanely successful, but gets attacked because of his conservative Christian beliefs in the movie world. Joe Rogan, the guy's insanely successful and he's got a ridiculous work ethic. But because he says something that people don't like, they want to get him canceled. Yeah, nobody says shit about Jocko. He's an awesome role model for people. Nobody says shit about him because they're scared of him, and rightfully so.
Well, he's just a seal. Yeah. I'm kidding. He's actually a badass. But the concept there is exactly that. If you are masculine, all of a sudden, like you're saying, you get shunned. You get, I don't know, shunned away. I don't even know how to say it.
You just get, well, it's not so much, it shun's the right word for it, but it's worse than that. You get turned into a pariah, a leper. Nobody wants to, they make you out to be this super horrible, awful person because they take something you said out of context.
But in actual reality, women want a male that is strong and that has masculine traits. They don't want somebody effeminate. They want somebody who
you always talk about. We want you. You always see this stuff about how women want you to open up about your feelings and be emotional.
99.9% of them don't want that.
I mean, it's
they want a man to stand up. They want a man to hold the door for them. They want to be treated like a woman. They want to be, they want the man to do the driving, for a stupid example, but get behind the wheel and go do it. They want the guy.
They want him to be masculine.
They want him to be, all these toxic masculine traits are exactly what women crave, exactly what women want, and it is a complete turnoff to them when you kind of turn your head or when you put your voice. You make your voice go up at the end of a sentence, like they do.
And it's we saw it on a cartoon the other day. I dropped a plate in the kitchen. The girls were watching a cartoon, just a non threatening kind of silly cartoon. At least I thought. I didn't see anything crazy about it until there's two boys in there, and they were they're younger boys. I would say in the cartoon they're like 10 to 12 or 13 maybe. And when boys start getting rough and tumble and doing shit and fighting over stuff, and these two boys were having an argument over something, and they were kind of poking at each other about how one wasn't as strong as the other one, but one was smarter than the other one, and they were just going back and forth with banter. And then the other girl, and then normal boyhood behavior, learning pecking order and learning hierarchies, right. And learning that you can't say shit to certain people because you get popped in the mouth,
or learning how to talk to men, learning how to talk to other men,
and
is key.
The girl son on the side goes, "Oh, so this is what toxic masculinity looks like."
Right? You're like, what
the fuck did that TV just say?
Yep.
Okay, that cartoon's banned from the fucking TV.
But it's exactly it. Like being able to like poke
just
fun.
Being normal. Being normal boys is seen as something being bad.
Right. Like you and I poke fun at each other all the time. The stuff that comes out of our mouth towards one another makes half
what are you
people
talking about? I don't ever make fun of anybody.
Right. Yeah. But I mean that's normal male conversation, and it's appalling to the left. I mean, you should see like the cringeworthy. Half the stuff we say is cringeworthy to them. And it's not. It's just normal male back and forth, normal male banter.
And I think that leads to why you have success for people like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson specifically.
They just don't care.
Because, it's not that they don't care. They specifically jab at it.
Yeah.
They go at that culture pretty hard. Ben Shapiro specifically lately, he's done some funny ass shit. Like when he redid the WAP song. Have you seen that yet?
No, I haven't.
Holy fuck, dude. And some people took it seriously. And this guy's about as Jewish as it gets.
Oh yeah.
And he's
Where's
conservative.
the yarmulke?
And
All the time. Yeah.
They think he's seriously trying to sing this WAP song, and it wasn't done for humor. But that's because they want to not like the guy. They want to make fun of him. You know, Jordan Peterson has changed how many people's lives for the better.
Right.
Given people the ability to find purpose, which is super important. I think that's what kind of a lot of this boils down to is what's your purpose in life? Is your purpose to make things better, or is it just to gain power? Is it to be popular? Is it to be famous? Because it's so hollow. You know, it's like money. Money doesn't make you happier.
No, it's just a tool to make your life easier. Yeah.
And it's a lot of people are easy. Oh, if you have money, that's easy to say. Well, you know, it's funny because I haven't had a job for, I don't know, 8 months, other than what I've been fucking off on the side. I haven't made any more money. I've been spending money. I've been spending my savings.
Yeah, but you've been spending a lot more time with your family.
I've been making up for it by doing that. And yeah, I'm able to do it because I had money, but there's nothing that keeps me. I can live the way we live now. I can go find a job at Home Depot and work 40 hours a week with zero stress, zero responsibility.
Yeah, but what everybody else that isn't seeing is that I've known you for the last decade is that you've set yourself up. You've made investments. You've done everything to afford
that's
this.
The work. That's the work. But the point being is it wasn't the money that made me happy.
No,
and that's what the biggest realization was. And
but you had
that's the
purpose,
role model I want to give my kids. I you know, for me, in the day and age we live in now, you shouldn't live to work. You need to work to live.
Correct. And that is so easily inverse.
Flipped. Because it's easy. It's easy to work the grind. It's easier in your head to sit that. And I don't want my kids to do that. And one thing that I really want to do is I want to give my kids the choice to not have to go to college. I want them to do what they want to do. If they want to go 3 years and travel Europe and Asia or do whatever
go do it, yeah.
when they turn 18, go do it. College will be there when you get back. And you're really not, as long as you're willing to do the work, you're not set back by doing that. In fact, you're probably going to be a better person because you're going to understand yourself, you're going to understand the world, and you're going to have life experiences that most people don't get until they're 40 because they finally, they finally decide they've got money and they can decide they can go do this.
But then it gives you an appreciation for just how good you have it here in the United States. You know, when you go to Thailand, you see people bathing in the street because they don't have a bathroom.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and you come back to the United States, you realize just how blessed we are. I mean, like you said, that world view, you know, of understanding how the other half, more than the other half, lives versus our quality of life.
And I think that's the big problem. And that's the biggest fear I have is not having the guidance for my kids. And growing up like some of these kids I see in their early 18s and early 20s. And my mouth, it sounds kind of condescending for me to talk about kids when I'm, 35 or 36 or however old I am. But as far as life experience, I'm way older. With all the shit I've had to go through in my life, I feel like I'm a lot older than I am, and I've experienced a lot more. And I see kids making some of the mistakes I made as a kid, which I'm sure everybody goes through. But all these people don't have purpose in life. They don't have a direction. They don't have any real role models. When you put a fake role model up for somebody, it just, in the way it works, that's going to get collapsed around you because not everybody can get propped up because they're black. If everybody's black and gets propped up, then black isn't special anymore, right?
It doesn't matter.
So that whole principle doesn't work to make people special.
No,
you have to have this overwhelming identity of,
purpose.
Well, not just purpose, but that you're special because you're black. So the only way you can be special because you're black is because white people are everywhere. Right. Well, what about that? Doesn't work for people in black communities, right?
No.
Or Mexican communities, or women that are working in in primarily women-focused trades.
And that's been the great lie of the left, right there. If I jump in here, they've made your identity and your who you sleep with and what you look like and what you identify as the important things in life, and all those things are, I guess, important on an emotional level to some people, but it's not what matters. What matters is is the work. I can tell you right now, integrity, and going through everything, iteration, like we talked about last week. Going through all the iterations and understanding how you arrive there. That's what's important. I can tell you right now, business doesn't give a shit if you're white, if you're black. Business doesn't care if you're sleeping with males or females or how you identify, as long as you can do the work and you can be successful and get a return on investment. That's what counts. And the left has done a fantastic job of making that way down on the ladder there, on the totem pole.
Business does care about it, but only because they're fucking scared of it. And now they have to
in that
focus.
sense.
And now they have to focus on something that isn't important,
Right.
And waste resources.
So in that, okay, I'll give you that example. Yes, true. They do care about it now because there's a cancel culture. But I'm telling you right now, who's in charge of, whoever's in charge of, I don't know, Starbucks. Nobody gives a shit who that person is sleeping with, or what they look like, or whether they wear a dress, or whether they wear fucking jeans. Nobody cares. Can he do the job, or she can do the job, or whatever pronoun they want to use, and can they give me an ROI on my investment? That's what matters. And whether, regardless of what their last name is, whether it's nepotism or not, no one cares as long as you're doing the job. And that's that's the worst lie of the left. And schools have really kind of put forth is these other ancillary, these tertiary things are what really matters. And it's
We need
bullshit.
to focus on.
Yeah, you need to focus on whether or not what your pronoun and what bathroom you're in. That doesn't matter. What matters is keeping the lights turned on. What matters is getting an ROI for your investors, all this kind of stuff. Learning,
giving back to society.
yeah, giving back. Yeah, I don't like that because you're not giving back. You're just giving.
Well.
So like, if society hasn't given you anything, you're just giving.
No,
you know what I mean? Like,
so it doesn't. It doesn't. I see what you're saying, but when I say giving back to society, I mean society is this agreement we all have as people, right? That we're all going to get along. We're all going to follow the same rules.
yes.
So the fact that we have a society that's willing to do that, and not Mogadishu. That's you have that. You're raised up in that. You live in that. So the fact that you were able to grow up in a society that's balanced means you owe a debt to society. Not necessarily people, but you have to put something back into society to make it stay that way or make it better.
Right. Okay. I'll give you
Otherwise, you're just a slug. Otherwise, you're just somebody there that shows up on
Fodder.
weekends to throw fucking fireworks at cops because you don't have anything else better to do in life.
right. You have no purpose. Right.
And
I'll see what you're saying. Excuse me.
I've engaged some of these younger kids online, probably to my detriment, but when you try to point out, even in the most basic principles, anything that runs contrary to their narrative, and it's not even a belief because they don't even have beliefs. You can't even nail down a belief they have. They just have narratives, and you get labeled evil or a Nazi or a bootlicker.
Yeah. Right.
And again, it's the internet. It's shit that none of these kids would say to somebody face to face. They'll never do it. And they're so worried, like we were talking about, things that don't have real substance. So it's void. It's just like somebody's life who spends their whole life chasing money, right? At the end of the book from what's his face from Apple, not Tim Cook. He runs Apple now.
Names including.
Yeah, the guy that used to run Apple.
Yeah.
That's exemplifies it, right? The guy's dead. He was one of the richest people on the planet. We barely remember his name because we don't talk about it constantly.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. There you go. So he talked about on his deathbed when he was dying of cancer, how he made all this money and did all this stuff, and what he gave up to do that wasn't worth it. And how all the money in the world can't buy you time back.
That's right.
When I was working for the construction company, I was making really, really, really good money. And I was putting tons of it away. It's why I'm doing what I'm now doing is because I saved tons of it. I didn't go buy dumb shit. And if I bought it, I paid cash for it. Right. And the one of the turning points for me, one of the biggest turning points, and it wasn't even that I was having a bad day at work. 'Cause I don't even think I was. I was actually enjoying that day and getting stuff done and enjoying the problem solving. But I had to watch my kids learn how to ski from a cell phone, a video. Something that I had wanted to do for a very long time and take them out to do, I had to watch from a cell phone. And I was maybe 15 miles away, 20 miles. I don't know how far Bridger was from the office, but it's not very far.
No,
I was behind my desk. And that feeling of robbery, that I went from joy of watching my kids on a video and how awesome that was that they were learning to ski, to realizing I wasn't there to do it with them.
Yeah.
All because I could earn money. It didn't matter how much money I earned that day. It didn't matter if I got a $200,000 bonus because I worked that day. That money is never going to buy that time back.
Yeah, no.
And that was one of the reasons I made the choice I did, because I don't want to be dependent on the Kardashians or the Clintons or the fucking Kamala Harrises or whatever, flavor of the day politician the left pushes to be the role models for my girl. I want to be the role models for my girl.
Yep.
And I can't do that not being around them. And I think that's a fight that a lot of people, I'm fortunate that I was able to make the choice. Not just that I had the ability to make it, but had the foresight. I saw in a lot of these guys that were working there that are a lot older, that, some of them, their kids hate them, or, they only get to spend a couple hours a week with them. And I didn't want to be that. You know, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to diminish from those guys. I don't want to be mean to them. I don't want to be harsh to them. But that's not what I want to be. That's not where I want to be in life. I would rather live in a small house and drive around a shitty car and spend times with my kids than own 3 fucking razors, a giant fucking boat, and buy a brand new truck every 2 years.
Right. And you know, to that end, I mean, you and I were talking about it a little bit earlier today before we started this podcast. You know, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I had a little bit of jingle, you know, and I was able to scratch up enough to put a down payment on a house. And one of my coworkers picked me up to go to a party, and I said, "Hey, that's my house." And he said, "Oh, you mean the house you're renting?" And I said, "No." I said, "That's my house." He goes, "You mean the one you're staying in that you're renting?" I said, "No, I own it. It's mine. I have a mortgage on it. So I paid for it. I'm paying for it, etc." And that kind of changed the tone of the conversation. And it was, you know, going back to, like, I guess, what's his name, Dave Ramsey's book, you know, but he outlines it perfectly in his book, The Total Money Makeover. Not that I'm affiliated with him anyway, but
we're not sponsored.
I read
we're
the
not
book.
Sponsored.
We're not sponsored. I read the book, and it made a lot of sense. I was already doing most of the things that he already said. But, you know, the guy who kind of rolled his eyes at me, you know, wondering how an engineer, you know, been with the company 2 years, could afford a house that was bigger than his, you know, like he had $900 tires on his, you know, $5,000 Jeep. You know, he had it tuned out. He had all this, spent tons of money on random shit that didn't matter. And I'm driving around in a 20-year-old car, you know, and I brew my coffee at home. I don't go buy $7, you know, mochas at Starbucks. So it kind of like do the work, you know, and you reap the reward. But getting back to what you're saying, I'm living it right now, you know, like where I'm down at the border. I don't want my family anywhere near it, you know, but, you know, by choice, but it is painful to watch my kids grow up on a screen, you know, and knowing that what I'm doing is helping them, but in providing them a quality of life I've never dreamed of. At the same time, no, I want to be there. Nothing's going to replace a neck hug from my daughter. Nothing's going to, you know, a wrestle session with my son. Nothing's going to replace that, no matter how much. You're right. $1 million wouldn't fix that.
You know, and
so
that's, you know, it's one of those funny things is because a lot of the people, the youth, I guess, I keep saying that when I say the youth, I'm particularly mean the kids. You see these kids and their kids that are out there protesting, big time protesting. I'm not talking the ones that show up for the one protest, you know, like the one protest in DC a year or whatever. That's fine. I don't have any. That's fantastic actually, because you're engaging. I'm talking about like in Portland where you had 3 months of basically the same group of people running around. Most of those kids were kids. Yeah. They were somewhere between the ages of 16 and I don't think there was a single one of them over 30. There might have been a few, but the
Chaz residents,
you know, their role models are hollow and vapid. The kids that are actually going to be successful in life and that are really accomplishing stuff are too busy to do that. You know, they're in the trenches digging because they went and got a union job because they wanted some extra money to buy a car to impress a girl. While that is bad, it's consumerism, at least it sends them down this path of where they're learning stuff. You know, the kids that join the military, creating businesses. You know, the kid. There's a kid that we worked with in Vegas that absolutely tipped me over because I remember when he showed up the first day on the job. He had never been on a construction site. He was in the laborers union or the operators union, but I think the most he'd ever done was like push brooms or cleaned at a casino or something. I don't. It was 5 years ago, so I don't specifically remember his story. But he had never. Him showing up on our site was the first time he'd showed up on a construction site, and I remember that being shocking to me because you know you think about the unions and how you're supposed to get people, and I'm like, how are you here? Yeah. I mean, he was 18. I'm pretty sure he was 18. He might have been 19, but as an organization, as a company, as a job, we took him under our wing, and he worked as an oiler for the crane operator. By the end of those 4 years, he was 22, 23 years old. He was certified to run some of the biggest cranes in Vegas. That kid had an unbelievable future ahead of him. Yeah. And I don't want to say it was easy work, but it's easier work than digging trenches.
Right.
And you know why? Because he showed up and he did the work. He showed up every day. He put up with a lot of bullshit from people. He just turned a blind eye to people being shitty to him, and he learned every chance he had. And he ended up being one of the only kids that could operate the gantry crane.
Right, and he was, I know.
At the end of the job.
Yeah.
And
because he did the work. He went home and did the extra work. He didn't
stay
home and
but he had
hang
purpose.
He had purpose, yeah.
He wasn't out protesting. He wasn't, I mean, he might have showed up political rallies. I have no idea what political leaning he was. But he showed up and he worked. And those are the people that are the future of the country. I mean, you can talk about being, a community organizer. And then there's communities that need it. I'm not saying that there aren't purposes for community organizers. There's communities that need it. They need organization. They need somebody to speak for them as a whole, because the community is just completely wrecked.
Right.
But the idea that you've got people that are community organizers in Portland or fucking LA, all it is it's a corrupt churning wheelhouse that ends up with people like Kamala Harris.
Correct.
Who have never really accomplished anything in their life.
She didn't win her own state
because
they don't. Of the vote.
They're unprincipled. Yeah. Their goal in life is just power. It's not to make things better. It's just I want to be powerful.
Like Hillary Clinton. Yeah.
And so trying to find role models like that for the kids and being one yourself, because I remember chasing shit like that. I drove Mustangs as a kid, and part of it was because I loved Mustangs and I love cars, but it was also chasing girls and having that cool car and getting that attention. Right. It was all part of it.
What separates you from the other guy, right?
When I had kids, I ended up selling the Mustang. Not because I needed the money. I didn't need the money. I took a bath when I sold that thing. Right. But I sold it because I wasn't going to be using it. It was going to be I was going to be paying insurance on it to park in a fucking garage and not drive, and then spend $3,000 or $4,000 when I got back after a year or two to fix it and make it run again, right?
It's a liability.
So sell it. I sold it to somebody here in Bozeman and took that money and invested it.
Right.
And grew with it.
So you didn't have the glitz and the glam and the muscle car, so to speak, but you had an investment that was rolling over and making you money. So you got rid of a liability and picked up an asset. That's what matters, not the glitz and the glam, the Rolex or any of that bullshit. It's how much revenue are you generating.
And I guess at the end of the day, one of the things is balance as well. I want my girls to see people like Kamala Harris, but I want them to have somebody to compare it against so that they can make their own judgments.
Right. Kamala and women like that do my daughters a disservice, do your daughters a disservice. They are not feminists. They are the antithesis of feminism. I want my daughters to be actual feminists. I want them to be able to do whatever they jolly well please, and if it's in a male-dominated field, okay. If they want to be a race car driver, they want to
crush it.
Go kill it, yeah. But earn your way there, earn your stripes, and be respected for who you are, not what you are. And in Kamala's case, and
unfortunately, it's always
clear.
Yeah, unfortunately, in the world, it is what it is. You're always going to fight. You saw it in the Marine Corps, right?
Yeah.
Women had a hard place in the Marine Corps. Right. Some of them deserved the hard place. Some of them got it just because there was the bad rap that they got. The others gave them, right. And it works that way. The construction industry is same thing. It is insanely difficult to be a woman, and honestly, I think it's more difficult to be a woman in the construction industry than in the Marine Corps. Because in the Marine Corps, at least if you could show that physical aptitude and you could beat the fuck out of somebody, you got respected.
Right.
In the construction industry, you have to be gritty. You have to be tough. You have to be rude. You have to be willing to go to the ground and wrestle over issues. And dudes do it, it's just seen as normal. But when women do it, then it's like, oh my God, this woman's a C-word, or this woman's, she's such a bitch, or,
right.
God, who would want to work with her? She's not nice. Like, there's this expectation.
They got a harder road for sure.
Yeah.
But if they're sleeping with the boss, and that's how they got to where they are, then you really don't, you don't respect them.
Yeah, but in all my years, I can't think of anybody that got to be a PM or even an engineer and lasted.
Correct. And lasted. And that's the whole thing. So it goes both ways too. To that point, the people who are truly misogynist and the people who truly are really racist, they do not stick around very long. The system is built to where I've seen it. The actual misogynists, the actual sexists or racists I've seen in my adult life, when they're found out, they are eliminated very, very quickly. Within hours in some cases, they're out the door. Mm-hmm. So like the system, the women might have it harder, but the true misogynists, when they show their true face and they say terrible things about the girl, they're gone, and same thing with race, So the system is wired to not have them be successful. So when the left comes in and says, oh well, these people have it so hard, they really don't. If you are that person, the market, so to speak, will reject you. It's that simple.
And I guess one thing as people we have to do is we have to prop up the people that are the good role models. Just because you don't agree with Joe Rogan's take on transgenderism, right? Doesn't mean you should completely tear the guy down. Talk about how you disagree what he is.
Right.
but then celebrate the things that he's accomplished in his life. The guy has a fucking podcast that is massive and spreads information, good or bad, however you want to look at it. But he's a source for people for entertainment and gives voices to people that I mean, you think about the interviews he has with Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
The dude got in trouble with NASA because of his security clearance because he smoked pot on Joe Rogan's podcast. But he didn't give a fuck.
Right.
And you got to see a side of somebody. It's not this perfect, pampered,
No.
cut around the boxes deal, which is really good.
That doesn't exist. Right.
One of my favorite podcasts that Joe Rogan did was the Tulsi Gabbard and Jocko. Had them both on there talking, and it's like you sit there and listen to it and you're like, this is what politics, because those two are complete opposite ends of the political spectrum from each other, right. Tulsi and Jocko, pretty much. But the way they talked through things and understood stuff and got with each other, that's the role model we should be putting up for people. Right. Not Kamala Harris out there telling people that you're racist because of this, or Hillary Clinton, you're misogynist because you didn't vote for me, or Joe Biden saying you're not black. If you don't vote for me, you're not black. Yeah. You know, that's the division. Everybody talks about how divisive Trump is, and I just go, were you asleep during Obama's election?
Right.
I mean, everything they did was to pit this side against this side and make this side, the white people, feel bad about who they were instead of proud.
The moment he went out into he took the podium and he said the Milton Police Department acted stupidly. I'll never forget that moment. I looked at my wife and I was like, any chance of bringing the right to the left, you know, and bringing unity into our country just evaporated. Because if you had gone back and you had seen what the Middleton PD did, it was legit. Like, they did their job.
And the guy was a douchebag.
Yeah, and the guy was a punk about it and knew damn well what was about to happen. Setting it up, right.
And and there's a lot of people on the left like that I think are like that. Pete Buttigieg was like that a little bit at the start. He was in that race to see who could get retarded left as possible during the run-up. Like, it was a race of who could say the stupidest shit between Kamala Harris and Pocahontas and, you know, fucking Buttigieg.
10,000th of a percent.
But he had some stuff where he talked, and he had some middle ground stuff, but the middle ground didn't play on YouTube or play on the clips and stuff, and the super left attacked him for it, so he threw it away. But, you know, guys like, what was the guy that had the universal income thing? I can't think of his name. One of the other Democrats, but he talked about what his beliefs were. He rationalized them, and then he talked about what the other side that opposed him and rationalized them. Said, I understand it, but here's why I don't agree with what you're saying. So how do we figure out a way that we both can understand each other and come up with a solution for this problem? Because we all recognize there's a problem, right? And that's the problem. And sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's not a recognition, you know, like systemic racism. People don't recognize that there's actually, there's a problem that people don't recognize there actually is one on two sides of the aisle. One side says that, you know, we just throw people in jail for black, and then the other side that actually uses statistics and numbers says, yeah, well, they don't.
Right. But I think the main point, focus point of your argument there is that you have to be able to come to the other side. You have to have that dialogue. But what's happening now is they're shutting it down. Yeah, exactly. You're being called names instead of saying, "Hey, come over here. Let's talk."
And it's on the right. It's on the right. It's on the right too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
People don't have any willingness to understand why the black community is in trouble. Because it is. That's an agreement. The primary black communities in this country as a whole are in huge trouble. And some people don't want to recognize that, or they just want to say, you know, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, or, you know, you got to work to get out of it. There's more to it.
There's way more to it. There's a whole culture
that's part of it, but there's way more to it. And, you know, that kind of brings into why local politicians are so important. You know, if you're in an inner city in Chicago, Detroit, you know, Newark, you know, New York, doesn't matter where you're at, city as a whole, the president isn't going to make your life better.
No.
They have no ability to do so.
No, it's your local guys.
It's your local guys that need to do it. And how much an effect they have on your life versus how much... That's why everybody being so worked up over Trump, I never got it, because he didn't really do anything to affect you on a local level. You know, everybody's like, well, climate and, you know, the global warming is going to end the planet. And I was like, you know that climate emissions in the United States decreased under Trump, right? And before the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Like they did because of the coronavirus, because everybody stopped using shit. But in 2019, prior to the coronavirus, they were lower than the year before that. In fact, they were records. And it's because innovation drove it.
Right.
And so the idea that all these ideas
and
that
our laws and our policies here.
well,
drove it too.
Trump got rid of a bunch of the laws, is what I'm saying. The restrictive laws that actually do more harm than good.
Yeah, allow industry to fix it. But everyone's hyper focused on the rug burn that we have on our knees here, and they're like, well, we should probably put a Band-Aid on that when China and India, have bones sticking out of their legs. Like, you got to triage. If you're looking at this from a global perspective, the guy needs to treat, or countries, our leadership needs to triage the planet's main carbon producers and how they do business. There are no standards in China
or
like
India.
we have, or
China
India
and
like we
India,
have,
man. That's
like
it.
we have here, which is why I guarantee why business is there, because it's cheaper. They don't have to go through the
And
regulations.
what's after China and India? Africa's next, man.
Oh yeah, when you go and then through Southeast Asia, when you realize you hear the argument, those countries should burn more oil because the amount of gas that comes off, CO2 that comes off, and versus the grasses that they're using to warm their huts and warm their houses,
It's better.
Is better. And when you fly through there, I know you did, and when I flew through there was like a whole level of smoke that you had to go through,
or
and
several,
that's where it was retained.
sometimes different
Yeah.
colors.
Yes, of different colors. And you look out and you see fires everywhere. Now, if those guys weren't doing that and they were burning natural gas or they were burning oil, there would not be this layer of retained smoke in the atmosphere.
The global laws, the global idea that Biden's going to be this transformative figure, completely aside the fact that he's not, but he's not what's going to change things, right? So let's say they do put a mask mandate out, right, on a federal level, and say everybody has to wear masks. Well, governors in probably Montana, South Dakota for sure, Texas, they're going to tell them to go fuck off. We're going to run our state the way we want to. You don't have any right to do it.
Correct.
And you know why? That's because you voted locally.
Correct.
There's a reason California is under lockdown and Montana is not. And it's not necessarily because of the cases. It's because you have two different styles of leadership going on.
Right.
And you have a government that's afraid of its people versus one that sees it as it rules its people.
Correct.
The government in Montana is afraid of its people. And it's good.
Yeah, we're all well armed.
Well, not just, that, but on the other side of it, they know that Montana is actually pretty responsive when it comes to local elections.
Yeah.
Way more so than people would think. But very responsive. So when politicians do shit that the locals don't like, you end up with guys like Bullock.
Yeah.
So he sunk his own political career the more I see it now, I think he was just because he's trying to get on Biden's cabinet now. So I think that's kind of part of it. But
So how
getting his name out there,
go
but
further left than you could possibly
he
go.
tanked himself in local politics so he could get into the cabinet with Biden, or whatever Democrat gets elected next. So because of that responsiveness, that people respond to their local governments, the local governments won't try to do things that the people won't like. They won't do it. The federal government doesn't give two fucks about what you want to do. And I don't even mean the president. I mean the Senate, and I mean the House. They only care about what you want about 6 months before the election starts.
Your constituency. How it's supposed to run, though, is that your House of Representatives is who represents you regardless of where you are. So whether you live in if you don't live in San Francisco and California, but you live in, I don't know, Campo, California, where it's way more red, your representative shows up for Campo,
sort
not
of.
for.
But they don't vote.
Well,
I guess what I'm saying, John, is at the House of Representatives in Washington, they don't vote on levy taxes in Campo, California. They vote on tax policy and trade policy for the country as a whole. That doesn't affect you all that much. It does affect you a little bit. It's not going to affect you and it's not something you're going to be able to change a great deal as an individual. Whereas on an individual, your matters so much more on what happens in your community on a local level. Like here, right? Bozeman just did this whole thing with this green initiative with, putting EV vehicles out and this huge plan they have to be carbon neutral by 2035. I don't know what it was. The whole thing's a fucking pipe dream. But what they don't talk about is how they're going to pay for putting up free EV stations all over town.
Yeah, nothing's free.
And how they're going to pay for all this. And one of the biggest things that drives the gentrification of Bozeman right now is the taxes. People don't see it because they don't pay it on their day-to-day tax bill.
Right.
But where it comes from is the impact fees that when a new house gets built, which most of the houses in Bozeman in the last 10 years have been built in the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah. Huge explosion here, man.
And because of that impact fee and where that money goes absolutely crushes the cost of housing. It's a huge cost. $20,000-$30,000 on the house just goes to an impact fee that goes to the city for them to fucking piss away on dumb shit, which they've done.
Oh, yeah.
But we've seen repercussions in Bozeman to that, to where the locals have kind of voted in different directions. Now, you end up kind of with this idea where you get a bunch of people that come in and vote on ideas versus facts. And I think, honestly, that's kind of how you end up with places like San Francisco, right? The facts don't matter. There's so much money in San Francisco from the tech companies.
They can get away with it.
That they can do things on idea, not what's necessary. The problem is that stuff boils down eventually to where you've got people shitting on the streets.
I was going to say, dude, this year,
and people
2019, I guess not
leaving.
this year, but 2019, I read how the tech companies went to had their convention, which is like, I don't know, like $50 million a day worth of revenue. They brought it to Las Vegas because to the same convention center.
It was cheaper.
But the biggest thing they cite was needles. People shooting up, people defecating, people urinating on the sidewalks.
Camps.
And the vendors didn't want to go there. They were like, done. So there is, eventually, it will come back
and
around.
It does. And 100% it does. And that's the idea of local. You look at what community, if you go down to a community level, at least what I've done and looked, if you look at the communities that have rode out the coronavirus the best, they're the ones that have responsible leadership at the local level. Not people that are there to get sound bites because they voted for the next Green Deal.
Who can out safety the next guy.
Or out left the next guy. There are left-leaning communities that have done well, but it's because they've acted responsibly with their decisions.
Correct.
And they've responded to their community. And if the community, like let's say there's something that the community doesn't like but is good, instead of just ramming it down their throats, they explain to them, here's the facts, here's the science. You do that, people will respond to that. If you show them here's how we came to that conclusion, and you don't hide anything. You know, people are like, oh, well, the science says you should wear masks. Actually, the science doesn't say that.
Correct.
There is no science right now that proves that wearing masks actually limits any kind of spreading. There's some ideas and thoughts that it might help a little bit.
Totally, correct. Right.
And if anything, they flip back and forth. The only thing they've flipped back and forth more on than masks as a global community, the World Health and the CDC, is fucking lockdowns. I mean, right now the CDC is saying lockdowns are far more detrimental to people than not.
You get high alcoholism rates now. You're getting guys who are beating on their wives who never would have otherwise done that because they would have been at work. Mm-hmm. You're getting guys who are in children in particular, teenagers taking their own lives.
It's not that they're home that they're beating on their wives, but they're put into a situation now where they can't make money, and people get into these death spirals of emotion
drinking
and
bad
shit and all these negatives that nobody's talking about. Versus let's just lock people down. And
well, you know the old saying, the idle hands are the devil's play toy, and it is so true. I find myself doing stupid shit stuff. Period.
You waste time.
And
you find things to fill your. You don't just sit around and do nothing. You find something to fill that time.
It might not be positive.
And a lot of time, if there's nothing positive to do, it's not positive.
Right.
You know,
let's go drink in the middle of the day.
Yeah. Go throw eggs at cars, or I mean, the things you come up with when you're drunk are ridiculous. That you thought would be fun, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, why am I in jail?
What just happened here? That goes back to needing a purpose. It goes back to, it doesn't matter what you look like. Or
role model. It goes back to role models that give you a purpose. That here's what this person did, here's what they achieved, and this achievement is something real, something tangible, and something that helped the world better. Right. Not this person got famous and they used their fame to help a little bit. That rise was evil and bad, and a bad example for anybody who was involved in it. But then they do a little bit of good after that. Right. And I'm not trying to take away from that little bit of good, because a lot of times people that are like that can do more good than anybody else could ever do in their entire lives.
Because of the notoriety.
But that's not who I want to be a fucking role model. No. I don't want my kids to be like George Soros, who fucking he might give a bunch of money to philanthropy now and do a lot of good around the world, but he's ruined. I mean,
he's destroyed countries.
He shows up in Thailand. The fucking French Revolution would have nothing on what they would do to that man for what he did to their currency.
Right. And it goes back to, it doesn't necessarily mean, like earlier you mentioned, maybe the black community, has one set of standards. People saying you just need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and the other ones looking at them going, well, they just can't do it. But you look at people like Joe Rogan, who I don't think I remember watching one of his podcasts where he talks about he went to like a semester of school or maybe two, and that was it. And the guy is super successful because how to be successful didn't fit his personality. And same thing, Elon Musk, he immigrated came here as he's an immigrant, and a divorced family, the whole bit, and look where he is now. So it doesn't necessarily mean you got to go to college or you have to follow this line of thought or do this specific thing, but go do what it is you want to do.
You know, that's a good point, man.
You know?
Because what it is you talk about what's successful in this circle.
Right.
And if you're in an academic circle, what's successful is completely different than what's in a business circle.
Correct.
And people in the business circle see academics as useless, and people in the academic, they don't see them as useless, but they see them as, doing harm. The only reason you're just after the money. And it's like, okay, well, because I was after the money, we paid a lot of jobs and we did all this. But on the academic side that aren't useless, it's like, well, the reason you have an iPhone and you can do all this cool shit now is because we had people on the academic side that were in theory that thought up the microprocessor and fucking...
And built it, yeah.
And Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, about the difference between why it's necessary to have a left and a right. And it 100% is.
Yeah.
And in that aspect of not necessarily left and right politically, but in the way different people think. It's like the boil it down to how an engineer thinks versus how an artist thinks.
Yeah.
And an artist thinks something up, and an engineer makes it happen. Or in a business world, an artist is an entrepreneur. They come up with an idea for a business. An engineer streamlines it and makes it efficient.
Yes, and you need that.
And you have to have both, because guys that are on the engineer side, and I dare say me, have a hard time coming up with original ideas. But you give something to me, I'll make it fucking run like clockwork.
Yeah.
I can get everything out of it and make it done. Now, that's one of the great things that I've been able to do in the last 8 months is explore more of my imaginative side, which has been fun. But I'm still that guy. I'm still, I can't come up with a business idea, but what I can do is I can make your business run fucking fantastic.
Yeah, and I can give you a cool example. Talk about artists, and then it goes back to leadership in my mind's eye. When you're as a person being able to internalize and empathize with the next person, not necessarily be super rigid about everything. I set up an excavator for our team. We had an excavator. We had trucks coming in at a specific angle, and I used the clock as a reference. Now, to me, I learned 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock. I learned what that meant to, if someone said, hey, 9 o'clock long, I knew which direction to look. It was 3 o'clock, it just came natural. I said, hey, I want you to come in at 11 o'clock, back in, dump your load, and then leave. And the guy looked at me like I had two heads. He's like, I don't understand that military jargon. And I'm like, dude, I learned this in 6th grade when we were looking at girls. Like, hey, military 3 o'clock long, I was like, 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock, So I learned that when I was a boy, So I was like, okay. So I drew him a clock, and then I said this, and he just looks at me, he goes, I don't know what this means. And I'm like, all right, come with me. And like we walked out to the mound, and I said, I want you to back in at this angle, and then I want you to, dump, and then I want you to leave and go the opposite way. Once I explained it to him like that, he got it. Turns out he was an artist, and he was thinking like an artist, to kind of hit on your point there.
Right.
And like he literally had no fucking clue what I was talking about until I walked him out there and showed him. And then he turned out to be like one of our better drivers, But he had that mindset of an artist, not of an engineer,
And that's kind of one of the deals with success, is it gets into this idea of what you think is, or do you think you're successful because everybody else sees you successful, or because you see yourself as successful? And that circular talk right there again is are you only seeing yourself as successful because everybody else determined you as successful? That is a very bad place to get in, because success is different for everybody.
Yeah.
And it works great in the corporate infrastructure because it brings up the whole keeping up with the Joneses and climbing the corporate ladder and all that, because it's this agreed upon success metric that it doesn't matter what else happens peripheral to that. You could go through 3 marriages and your kids could never talk to you again. And you could die of alcoholism 3 weeks after you fucking retire. But goddamn, was he successful in fucking business?
Right.
That's meaningless.
Right. Exactly. It is completely meaningless.
Unless that's what you want in life. Unless that's what you see as successful. If you see as successful as you climbed all the way to the top, retired and died, and you're done, and that's what you wanted, great. That's what you can go after. That's not what I'm after, and that's not what I'm going to determine my success is. My success is going to be the legacy I leave with my kids.
Right. I've heard it said before, if success for a single person is basically measured by how much money you make and where you live at the end of your career. Success for people who have families is how well you raised your kids and how adaptable to life they are. Not necessarily how much money they're making, but how skilled they are.
How prosperous are your kids? I don't want to use the word successful. Let's just say prosperous.
Prosperous in
life.
How
prosperous are your kids?
Right. Are they Is your daughter swinging from a pole, or is she, on a board of a Fortune 500 company? Those are the
Or
major
is she
stories
building
like that.
schools in Africa, or
Right.
is she throwing fucking Molotov cocktails at police?
Correct, right. And so, it doesn't necessarily mean, but yeah, you judge, is your kid, shooting up coke or shooting up, heroin on the side of the street in San Francisco, So those are reflective on you as the parent.
Yep.
So again, success is, it'd be nice to have both money and kids that aren't on drugs, But
And there is another side to it, and it's something I've always in my head I kind of rationalize when I talk through it, and it in my own internal monologue, right? And it's you can't control your kids. God, I mean, you see it with yours and mine, especially Liberty. The more you push, it's like oobleck. Fucking the harder you push, the harder it gets, right? So all you can do is be good examples for them and show them what works.
Yep.
And give them the tools to be successful in life and be prosperous, and then it's up to them to use them.
Yep.
Because if you try to force success, you end up with
They'll reject it.
well, it's not maybe not out of reject it, but they do things for the wrong reason. They don't understand. If you're doing something because somebody else tells you it's what you're supposed to do, and you don't understand why you're doing it, you don't do it right. That's why, and you don't make decisions. You just go that path.
No, I try to tell Hannah. I try to tell even the men I work with, the women I work with. I'll give them an assignment, and I'll say, "Do you know why?" One of the kids came up and he's like, "Oh, all I'm doing is putting liners underneath."
You're right.
Underneath, what was it? Underneath, he's making fuel pits, putting liners under fuel pits. Like, that's all I'm doing on this $500 million job.
He's
And I
watching
was
somebody
like,
else do something
yeah.
cool, and he's
And I'm like, so he just bought a brand new truck because he's young and he can do it. And I said, "Hey, how much does this truck cost?" And he says about $55,000. I was like, "It's really nice." I said, "Could you drive this truck without the $4 spark plug, that's in it? Because you take one of them out, and that thing's not going to run." And and like he
cut
got
the 20-cent wire that
Yeah.
connects the park
Right.
plug.
I was like, dude, everybody here is integral. Everybody here is in support of the end goal, whatever that is, and it's cool. It's awesome to be in support. Own it, love it, And like he left, he had a little pep in his step.
Right.
I wanted to nickname him Sparkplug, but it was kind of condescending. Would have been way too condescending for him, but but he got it. Like all of a sudden, it clicked. And
Right.
it's all it took was an explanation of a simple why. Like, hey, someone told him just go do this, and he went, "Oh, okay." But now he understands what efficiency he brought to the job by building that. So.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same thing with kids too. It's funny because if you get into as parents, it's just do what I tell you to do. You kind of get into that mode. Everybody does it. I was
told that by my mom daily.
Well, I do it. I even do it now when I don't want to do it. That's how it as a parent it comes up. But then if you sit the kids down and you explain to before they get into like meltdown mode and get super upset, right? But if you sit down and explain to them, here's why we're doing something. Shit, half the time they're like excited to do it. It could be like the most awful chore on the planet, but they're like, "Yeah, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it."
Yeah, and when they're done, they come up and brag, and I tell you that makes you feel 10 feet tall as a dad.
Yeah.
When your kid does something you taught them,
And that's just not kids. That's everybody.
Everyone,
That fits to people.
Right.
It's just exemplified in kids really well because the interactions are so much simpler, I guess.
Right. It goes back to your point you touched on earlier. Where you have it's easy to tear something down. But it takes a lot of effort. It actually takes thought. You have to stop and think to build something up, and that whether that be the person or an item, like it takes one stick of dynamite to level a house, and it takes 50 guys 100 hours to build one. So like, and that's true with when you're teaching your kids or you're leading your men or women, whoever it may be.
Well, and I mean, kind of to round it back out to where we started with the whole role model thing. That's what I'm trying to work towards is. Explaining not just that Kamala Harris is a bad person, you should want to be like her. It's explaining to a 9-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old
look up to her
why this isn't a good thing to look up to. This isn't somebody that's a role model, or this cartoon and what's happened. One of the things I guess is a good thing is why we don't want them watching. There's certain cartoons that they really like to watch, but we don't like them watching because it's got like it has this Valley Girl kind of idea to it, or it's got lessons in there that I don't want to say they're necessarily bad life lessons, but they're hollow life lessons. And I couldn't name the specific cartoons.
or
It's just
just
ones
garbage.
But when you talk to them about why we don't like it, or they're just completely empty, vapid fucking shows versus other stuff out there. Like Jess and I aren't deeply religious. Like we don't go to church or anything like that. But there's a couple of like biblical cartoons that are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, and it shows kids life lessons in a cartoon kind of way. And one of them's like this time traveling kid who has a problem, and then they go back to the Bible verse and in the past time travel, and it's kind of a super cool show. And it's not so much that I want my kids to be super religious. I mean, I do. It's not that I want them to have a specific religion, but it's the life lessons that are really important.
I mean, go back to, and I don't care. Go back to, like, you know, the good book and the Bible. If you were to remove faith, pretty much from any religion, not Buddhist, doesn't matter. If you were to remove faith from that, take Jesus out of the Bible and take God out of the Bible, the angels, what does that book teach you? If you remove all of that,
It's just the life lessons.
they teach you to be a good person. They teach you to be a good role model. They teach you how to fit into society and not steal your neighbor's shit. You know, I mean, like, take the 10 Commandments. You know, even if you don't believe Moses brought him down off the mountain or whatever, all those are good rules to follow. Yeah. You know, so I think that's what you're saying.
It's kind of the idea
of the day,
people say the Bible's written by man. It's full of shit. Dude, I don't care who it was written by. It's still got some good shit in it. Yeah, you can believe whatever you want about it. That doesn't take away from the stuff in the Bible.
Right. Don't mess with your neighbor's wife. Don't steal his shit. Like, those are good ideas.
Don't kill people.
Don't kill. Don't lie. You know, how about if we're talking what you say is the truth? You know,
don't covet other people's accomplishments. Right. You know, there's
like very good lessons for I don't care who you are, grown man or a child.
And I've actually read the Bible cover to cover, I don't know, 2 or 3 times in my life. I just get into a weird kick and I want to go through it. And some of it's fucking super hard to read. I'm not going to pretend that I even understand everything. But you read through it a couple of times and there's actually some really cool stories in there. Especially when the way our minds work and we relate things to our current situations. And then you see something that happened a long time ago and you're like, wow, that's kind of fucking cool. I was doing it. I watched Patriot again. And you look at some of the stuff about what happens in the Patriot, you know, with Mel Gibson and pre-Revolutionary War. And, you know, they talk about, you know, it played in my mind with when they were talking about, you know, when he was giving the speech in front of the assembly that they were having. And he's like, you guys want to go to war. This won't be fought on some distant battlefield. This is going to be fought in our yards. It's going to be fought by our children. And people that are talking about revolution on the left or right now, it makes you wonder if they really understand. I know some people do, but there's a lot of people that don't understand that what you are talking about, you have no idea what you're...
It's horrific.
Yeah. And then there was another line in that same kind of scene where he was talking about how, you know, they were talking about their rights being trampled by the king. And he says, a Congress, I think he says, like, a Congress of elected men can trample your rights just as surely as a king can.
Yeah. Here we are.
Like where we're at.
Right. But these people, when
telling people they can't go to church and... You know, literally the most basic violation of the First Amendment. Right. The First Amendment. We're not even talking about it. And it brings up the funny memes about that, you know, that one guy looking at the news going, first time. It's like, that's what Second Amendment people feel like right now with everybody bitching about First Amendment. It's like, oh, this is the first time you're worried about your constitutional rights being violated.
Right. And then you got the tech companies lining up to who can out-censor the next guy.
Yeah.
What about freedom of speech? You know, and I understand they're not Congress, and the law says Congress shall make no law, blah, blah, blah. What I'm saying is, they're lining up to censor themselves, you know, and then you guarantee they're gonna shrug at one point and go, what do you mean I got censored? Because this will come back around. They will eat themselves. You know, somebody on the left will post something that'll get censored, and then they'll start, you know, squealing.
It's already starting to happen because one of the funniest things I saw was somebody, you know, one of the Antifa's things they did a lot of as local groups is they dox people they didn't like, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, all these Antifa people that got arrested for like the really bad shit, like the guys that were actually hurting cops or breaking shit,
setting buildings on fire,
they got doxxed, and now they can't get jobs anywhere. And they're like, oh, you can't dox. Literally the same group that was doxing people saying, you can't, come on, you got to stop doxing us. This isn't fair. I can't get a job now. And it's like, well, no fucking shit. Right. You mean your consequences have actions? Shocker.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, doxing is when something happens in public, you get arrested. That's typically your information.
Well, it doesn't have to be arrested. It's somebody just put, if you're a private individual and somebody puts information your address, your phone number, and they make it easy for people to find. Your information's there, but they make it easy to find. They put specifically in a post, hey, call. They do it to politicians all the time in their houses. They say, hey, call this politician. Here's their number. Right. That's a form of doxing.
Right. And so, like when you politicize it and you weaponize it, that's basically what I don't know. That's happened to like Sean Hannity. They've shown up to his house, I guess. Tucker
And
Carlson.
these are people that have armed security and afford it. It's bad when it happens to somebody who is like, let's just say a local kid who's counter-protesting Antifa. And
then
they give everybody his address, and now
he
they
gets
get
harassed at
death
home
threats. They get packages sent that they like, fuck, it could be a bomb or anthrax. They get all sorts of stuff happens to them. That's doxing.
Right. So yeah, now it's happening to the left. Antifa's going, oh, whoa, you can't do that. Yeah, I read that the other day. Like, no, dude. Like you set a building on fire, and then somebody from George Soros's cabinet bailed you out, or AOC put together a fund to bail you out. No, there is a distinct
Biden and Kamala Harris, the entire campaign
bailed them out so they could do it again. Like, what is this? You know? And now you're going, oh shit. Like, no, you created the weather. Now you don't get to say, oh fuck, it's raining. Yeah. You know, like.
And part of it is I see a lot of these kids, and I wonder what their parents are. You know, are it would be an awesome case study to go look at the parents of all of these kids. You know, are they really entitled rich kids? I think most of them are.
Yeah, they're
middle
all
class.
Middle class white
but
yuppies.
Are their
jobs.
parents vote left or right? If their parents are regardless of what political side they are they absent parents? You know, they put their kids in front of a TV for 10 years and that was the babysitter, so they could go, you know, do their cocktail parties, or they could work fucking 80 hours a week, or do whatever. You know, what I would love to see a case study on all of these juvenile delinquents that got in trouble damaging property, rioting, basically. Not protesting, rioting.
Rioting, yeah.
That would be an awesome case study to do, to see what the parents are. Because that right there, if those kids grew up without any kind of direction or any kind of good role models, they're going to go to whatever's popular. And right now it's super. I can get famous by going and fucking throwing, you know, fireworks at cops, or lighting a fucking community building on fire, or, you know, trying to burn down a car dealership.
You can go get paid to go do that.
Yeah,
you can go get paid to do that, to tear something down. You know, there was a cartoon talking about that earlier. There was something, I think it was called Atlantis, and at one point one of the guys is Michael J. Fox, and he's like this archaeologist, and he looks at the statue and he's like, this took hundreds of man hours, probably took hundreds of guys to build this statue. This is so amazing. And then the demolitions expert comes in, takes 2 sticks of dynamite, goes, and he's like, look, I made a bridge. It took what, one guy, 5 minutes, you know, and they made a bridge out of this statue, you know. But it's the same concept. It takes so much effort to build something, and it takes such little thought, such little intellect, such little effort to tear something down, you know, and it can be done. So you have this group of people, or, hey, go in there and burn everything down. Oh, by the way, set up your own chop zone, you know, your own Chaz, or whatever the hell it was called.
Chaz, who fuck cares?
But then at the end of it, they're like, well, we don't have any running water, and we don't have any food, and we have armed security. And
we're trying to grow plants on concrete. Did you see that?
Yes.
Cardboard boxes, a little topsoil, and put some plants in there.
Yep.
This is how you grow, right? Maybe in
grow.
about 6 months, you have enough food to feed a half a person.
And then it was only people of color were the only ones who were allowed to harvest it. And then there was a wall, but you can't build a wall down to protect your country.
That's the first thing they did was put a fucking barrier up.
Put barriers up and had guys with guns standing there going, hey, don't come in here. So anyway.
And that's a lack of principle. I guess it kind of boils down to, you know, you want to simplify it, and maybe that's what we end it with, but trying to get as role models as the role models that you should have, not just your kids should have, but you should have as a person, are people that have principle. People that want to go towards something. And it was one of the biggest struggles I had with Trump to start off with. And I still don't know if I could say he has principle. He does what I like him doing. But I didn't like Trump when he first started running, because I didn't think he was a principled person. Because you look at his past. You look at his history of pretty much being a Democrat. But I don't think he was a Democrat. He was just an opportunist.
Yeah.
But you can see where he sits down and he talks with people and they explain an issue. Maybe one that he's never thought before, like never thought deeply about, like abortion, for example. Some people hit him for his change on abortion, but if you look at how he got there, it was because he talked to principled people. He's a president of the United States, but he still has role models, if you will. He still brings people in to talk to.
Right.
And God forbid, I don't want my kids to be anything like Trump, but finding people that are principled to set up as role models for your kids, it doesn't necessarily have to agree with those principles, but it shows them that if it doesn't matter what you do at the end of the day, if you're principled, you're honest and people respect you more. Correct. Versus if you just go with the way the wind blows.
Even if they're on the opposite side, they'll respect you at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah, I want my son to be respected, not to be put on a pedestal because they cut a video, you know.
Well, this was good, John. I'm glad we were able to sit together and do
Finally,
one
do
side
one
by
that's
side
in the
instead
same
of
state.
spend a half hour fucking around with internet connection trying to get it right.
And you're halfway in the middle of it. It's like,
John's hamster wheel internet in Southern California.
well, if you take the router and you take it out of the lead encasement.
So we hope you guys appreciate it. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, comment, ask questions, argue with us. We're fine with anything. If you guys don't agree with anything we said, let us know. We love to dive into stuff like that. We want to understand. It helps the channel out immensely. This will be on several podcasts. Let me actually look up the list here real quick, and I'll tell you. We'll be on Spotify for sure going forward. And then, we're going to put up a Facebook, Two Marine Dads Facebook page. And then, so the sites we are up on we are up on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify. We will be looking to get up on Apple as soon as we can, and maybe Podcast Addict. I'm not totally sure we can do it, but I think we can. So we'll be all over the place. So you can listen to us off of YouTube and not have to be on a cell phone or anything like that. So again, we appreciate you guys listening. We hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. John and I are having a blast doing this.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, man.
I know we kind of ramble around a little bit, and we're working on getting a little more specific on our topics. And we'll try to get a more regular schedule on the short form content for you guys.
Yeah, if you guys have
like
something
that.
out there for us, if you have a suggested topic, let us know.
By all means. So with that, we'll sign off. We thank you guys for watching.
Semper Fi.
You have a good rest of your week.